At Starbound, we tell stories the human way, not with artificial voices or AI slop. After all, what's HFY without humanity? Subscribe to keep it that way. I'm Larissa. Let's begin. Frairen was dreaming about pizza again. It was one of those good dreams where everything made sense even when it didn't. Rayburn stood in the doorway of her quarters aboard the Big Mouth Bass, holding a steaming box with that predatory grin of hers plastered across her face. Her hooded green eyes glimmed as if Frairen had just become her prey, and the smell of cheese and pepperoni filled the small room, making Frairen's stomach growl even in her sleep. She was reaching for a slice when a voice cut through the dream. "Frairen? Frairen, wake up!" The dream shattered. The pizza vanished. Rayburn's grin faded into nothing. Frairen's pink eyes cracked open to the lighting of her quarters. The simulated night cycle had clearly ended without her permission, and someone had overridden her room's dim settings. She squinted against the brightness, her ears flattening in annoyance as she tried to process who had the absolute balls to wake her up like this. Miss Rimiki stood at the foot of her bed. Frairen blinked, then blinked again. The Zumra instructor stood there with her scaled hands clasped in front of her, expression unreadable. Frairen's brain, still foggy with sleep, tried to make sense of it. Miss Rimiki, in her quarters, standing over her bed. This was definitely weirder than Rayburn showing up with pizza. "What's going on?" Frairen asked, her voice still rough from sleep. She sat up in bed, her ears forward but wary. "Why are you here, Miss Rimiki?" Miss Rimiki walked around the small corridors, her four eyes taking in the room, though Frairen suspected she wasn't really looking at anything. Just moments later, those eyes moved to Frairen, who had shifted to sit properly on her bed, pawed feet now touching the deck. "I just came from a meeting with the Yorpal elders and the Zumra Council of Leaders," Miss Rimiki said. She clasped her hands in front of her again, her tail swishing once behind her. "This couldn't wait until tomorrow, so I asked Agent Smith for a favor. He brought me to the Big Mouth Bass in secret." Frairen's ears perked up at that. Agent Smith, the intelligence liaison. Her mind immediately started churning through possibilities. The elders had been a persistent thorn in her side, always trying to drag her back to Dagmar Prime, always questioning her choices, always treating her like some wayward child instead of a battle-tested NCO. And now, they'd met with Miss Rimiki and the Zumra leadership? That couldn't be good. What could be so important that Rimiki had to sneak aboard the ship in the middle of the simulated night cycle? "What did they want?" Frairen asked, her tail unconsciously curling around her leg. "It's about the attack on the station," Miss Rimiki said. "The champions." Frairen's ears flicked forward, her full attention locked on the Zumra instructor now. "With a lot of effort, humanity convinced both the elders and the Council of Leaders to gather in person on Earth to resolve the current tensions." Miss Rimiki moved across the small quarters and, without asking, took a seat in Frairen's desk chair. "Your recruits sending middle finger emojis to the elders isn't making things easier, Frairen." Frairen's lips pressed tight despite herself. Trimmy, that little bastard. "Some of my own decisions have also made the Zumra leadership suspicious," Miss Rimiki continued. "They're reluctant to believe that the champions are a real threat, that they need our utmost attention." "You're still not making sense," Frairen said, though her mind immediately flashed back to the station, to that thing standing outside the classroom door, to the mental attack that had nearly brought her to her knees, to almost losing Ramira, her claws clenched into fists, the blunt edges digging into her paw pads. "The elders are arrogant and stupid. If you came here to ask me to try and reason with them, I have no intention of doing it." She stood up from the bed, her dull yellow fur bristling as she met Miss Rimiki's four-eyed gaze head-on. "I am a kawaii through and through." Miss Rimiki smiled gently as she played with her head fronds, the draconic appendages shifting as she tilted her head. I didn't leave my human in a lonely bed at night to convince you to reason with the elders," she said, her voice soft but serious. "I came here to ask if you were willing to accept a secret mission, Frairen. A hard one, a very dangerous one." Frairen heard everything, but something else caught her attention first. "You're human?" she asked, her ears perking up even as she tried to hide her interest. Miss Rimiki laughed, somehow lightening the weight in the small quarters. "That's what you want to talk about, not the dangerous mission I just mentioned." She shook her head, her arms crossing in front of her beautiful draconic form. "I suppose it makes sense after all, you and that training specialist of yours." She let the words hang, and Frairen's tail gave a small involuntary wag before she could stop it. "I don't mind discussing the subject of certain kinds of interactions with humans," Miss Rimiki continued, her 4 eyes narrowing in an obvious attempt at humor. "You're one of us, after all, but it's not the time for this right now." Her expression sobered. "Are you ready to hear about the mission?" Frairen thought about what Miss Rimiki meant by one of us, but she pushed the thought aside. She gave a short nod instead of answering. Miss Rimiki straightened in her chair. "Humanity suspects the Mandarin champions won't miss the opportunity to attack the gathering of elders and leaders. That's the mission for you and your friends." Frairen's ears shot forward. "Wait, protection? You're asking us to protect those leaders at the event?" "No," Miss Rimiki said, standing from the chair. "I'm not asking you to protect the elders. The humans will do their best to do that." She began pacing the small room, her movements quick. "I'm asking you and your friends to go through the Mandarin portal when they attack." She stopped and turned to face Frairen directly. "I'm asking you to carry a beacon to their home world and protect it, so that humanity can find their home, so that humanity can finally get revenge for the millions that died in the Mandarin attack on Earth." Frairen's pink eyes widened, her claws flexed at her sides as the weight of what Miss Rimiki was asking settled over her. She slowly paced toward the Zumra instructor, her mind already racing through the implications. "I'll find Himmel and Zetrin right now to ask," Frairen said, her voice steady despite the adrenaline starting to build in her chest. "But I'm pretty sure that even Zetrin wouldn't run away from this fight." A sleepless night and morning later, Miss Rimiki stood alone at her speaking place in the conference room. The setup was similar to the one where Frairen had been questioned by the elders on the station, but this time, the Zumra leadership was also on Earth. The room was larger, more formal, with windows overlooking the training grounds below where human soldiers jogged in formation. Miss Rimiki's head fronds were tense as she heard the murmuring behind her. The Yorpal elders had arrived early, clustering together at one end of the long table, their voices traveling loud across the room, despite their attempts at discretion. "The HFY is training the traitors to send middle finger emojis to us," one of them said, his white fur practically bristling as he spoke. "This is what comes from letting them train with humans. No respect, no discipline." "Where is she?" another elder demanded, this one with black and white fur. He turned his head toward the human liaison standing near the door. "Where is Frairen? Why is humanity not keeping their agreement? They promised she would be here to answer for this disrespect." Miss Rimiki crossed her arms, and she kept her back to them, staring out the window. She had expected this. The elders were predictable in their outrage. A deep voice cut through the murmuring. "What is happening here, Miss Rimiki?" She turned slowly to face the speaker. He was massive, even for a Zumra, easily 7 feet tall with scales and muscles. His 4 eyes were fixed on her. They were so intense that they would have made most people flinch. This was Council Leader Vera, the head of the Zumra Council of Leaders. "Why were you so obstinate about forcing your hand to come to this planet?" Varrock continued, his voice serious, his head fronds were rigid, a sign of his displeasure.
You know what Earth does to our people. You know why we established the non-social engagement clause, and yet you insisted we come here, in person, to this world where Zumra visits and never wishes to return.
Miss Rimiki exchanged a look with Agent Smith, who stood near the door alongside a few other humans and representatives from less troublesome allied species. A few Optican were attending the meeting remotely via holographic projection, their avian features flickering on and off as the signal adjusted. Earth's gravity was simply too much for them to attend in person without extensive preparation. She turned back to the Yorpal elders, her expression neutral.
Frairen will be here soon,
she said smoothly. Then she turned to Varrock and the other Zumra leaders, her 4 eyes meeting his without flinching.
As for why you are here, Council Leader, humanity wanted to question you about the reason you don't believe the champions are real.
It wasn't exactly a lie. That was indeed one of the reasons for this gathering. The humans did want answers about the leadership's skepticism regarding the Mandarin threat. The champions had nearly killed Frairen, and her team on the station had proven themselves to be far more dangerous than anyone had predicted, and yet the council still dragged their feet. But Miss Rimiki certainly wouldn't say that all of them were here to be bait. She wouldn't mention that Frairen wasn't actually coming to this meeting at all, that she, Himmel, Zetran, and a handful of Yorpal recruits and a full human tactical team were somewhere close to this room right now, waiting like predators in the shadows, armed, ready, carrying an expensive FTL beacon that would activate the moment a Mandarin portal opened and the team crossed it to the other side. Because if the champions came for this gathering of elders and leaders, humanity would finally have what it needed, a chance of locating the Mandarin homeworld. Frairen stood fully armed outside the gathering room, her XC-1 Lancer magnetically strapped to her olive-drab chest plate. The rifle sat secure against her armor, ready to be pulled free in an instant. Her slammer hung from her belt on the left side, the powered warhammer's weight familiar and comforting. Beside her stood her friends. Himmel cradled his new 40mm grade launcher, with a kind of affection most people reserved for pets, his orange point eyes gleaming. Zetran held one of the new flamethrowers from the recent training, the bulky weapon looking almost elegant in the Karlaken's clawed hands, his hood slightly flared. Staff Sergeant Kowalski stood at the front of the team, the same human who had led them through the station when the champions attacked. His nameplate gleamed under the hallway lights as he addressed the assembled soldiers, mostly humans, with Frairen, Himmel, Zetran, and 3 Yorpal recruits mixed in.
Today's goal is not protection of civilians,
Kowalski said, his voice firm.
That will be the role of the various other teams stationed throughout this building. They'll be the bravest at the beginning, under the worst risk if the Mandarin come through those doors.
He paused, his jaw setting.
We have a different mission. When those portals open, and believe they will, we're going through. We're finally bringing the fight to those damn gray elves who can't win a fair fight against humanity, who have to cheat by coming back from the dead and stealing body parts from other species.
Kowalski stopped pacing and turned to face them fully.
What does humanity and friends have in store for them?
Iron and Steel! Frairen bellowed in unison with everyone else, the war cry echoing down the hallway. Kowalski's hard expression cracked into something that resembled a smile. He turned to Frairen specifically, reaching down to pick up a cylindrical device from the equipment case at his feet. The FTL beacon. Small, but packed with technology that cost more than Frairen wanted to think about.
The crazy furry who saved the day at the station,
Kowalski said, holding the beacon out to her.
We'll have the honor of carrying this.
He turned to address just the humans in the group.
Does anyone have anything against that?
No, sir! Came the immediate response from every human throat. Frairen felt something warm bloom in her chest as she took the beacon, carefully securing it to her armor's equipment webbing. Despite how she'd acted on the station, running ahead, screaming, nearly getting herself killed to save Ramira, the team still trusted her, still wanted her leading this charge. She turned to face her 3 Yorpal recruits. Makia, Vardal, and Trimmy. All 3 stood at attention, their ears forward and eyes locked on her. "See?" Frairen said, her voice overflowing with just enough edge to make them listen. "The humans trust us. If any of you do anything stupid, you will die in the training field later when I'm done with you. Are we clear?"
Yes, Sergeant!
All 3 barked in unison.
Do you think they'll really come?
Himmel asked, clearly excited.
I wonder if the Mandarins will actually attack.
Zetrin added, his words drawing out a little. Frairen checked the beacon one more time, then looked at her friends and smiled, showing just a hint of teeth. I hope they do. Miss Rimiki's head fronds were rigid in frustration as the white-furred Yorpal elder droned on for what felt like the 100th time.
We remain unconvinced,
he said, in that particular tone of superiority that made her want to send a psychic spike through his skull.
Humanity has presented no concrete evidence that these so-called champions represent a genuine threat to the Cinderella Confederation. What we have seen instead is a calculated effort to co-opt our warriors, to addict them to the earth through various means.
A female Zamra leader, council member Tashara with her deep blue scales, nodded in agreement.
The food alone is suspect. We have reports of Yorpal gaining significant muscle mass and refusing to return home. We fear they might inspire more Zamra to defect.
Her 4 eyes cut toward Miss Rimiki.
The Yorpal become addicted to the strange camaraderie among human fighters, to the physical interactions.
Miss Rimiki felt her stomach tighten. She felt as if they were talking about her, about Caden, about every Zamra who had dared to defy the non-social engagement clause and found something on Earth worth staying for.
The non-social engagement clause exists for a reason,
Varrock rumbled, his massive frame shifting as he leaned forward.
To protect our people from exactly this kind of cultural contamination. And yet we find our own kind ignoring these protections, drawn in by human tactics.
The word hinted at disdain. Agent Smith stepped forward from his position near the wall, his expression neutral.
Council leaders, elders, with all due respect, we've provided detailed reports on the champions, combat footage from the station attack, intelligence gathered from...
Reports can be fabricated,
the black and white furred Yorpal elder interrupted.
Footage can be altered. We have only humanity's word that these creatures are as dangerous as they claimed. Meanwhile, our warriors disappear into your training programs and emerge changed, loyal to Earth rather than their home worlds.
Because Earth makes them strong, Miss Rimiki said, her voice cutting through the murmuring. Every eye turned to her.
No! It's because humanity has found effective methods of control,
Varrock said, his tone final.
Methods that bypass our traditional governance structures. Methods that exploit biological and psychological weaknesses we do not know we possessed until contact was made.
Miss Rimiki crossed her scaled arms, her tail swished behind her in agitation. She wanted to scream at them, to show them exactly what the champions were capable of, to drag them through the memories she'd stolen from Turin's mind, the halls of dead Mandarin, the grotesque flesh-crafting chambers, the parasites that turned corpses into puppets. But they wouldn't believe her. They'd say she was compromised, seduced by humanity like all the other defectors. The mental discomfort built in her chest like a pressure cooker. Her fronds began to ache with the effort of containing her frustration. She could feel Caden's absence. He was somewhere safe, away from this gathering, and she wished desperately that she was with him instead of here, watching her own people dig their heads deeper into the sand. A point representative raised his hand tentatively.
Maybe if we could see one of these champions in a controlled... The building shook. It wasn't a gentle tremor. The entire structure lurched sideways with a grinding screech that sent data slates skittering across the conference table. The windows rattled in their frames. Dust rained down from the ceiling tiles. The room went silent. Then another impact, harder this time. The lights flickered.
What was that?
One of the Yorpal elders demanded, his white fur bristling as his ears pinned back. The human liaison near the door was speaking rapidly into his comm, his expression tight. Miss Rimiki saw Agent Smith's hand drift toward his sidearm. Another impact. The building groaned. Several of the Yorpal elders were on their feet now, their previous arrogance evaporating. The Zumra leaders stood as well, their fronds rigid like stone.
What is happening?
Varrock demanded.
What have you?
The main doors exploded inward. The reinforced metal tore from its hinges like tissue paper, the impact sending fragments of doorframes spinning across the room. A Yorpal elder screamed. A Point representative dove under the table. And through the shattered doorway came a champion. Miss Rimiki's blood turned to ice. It was massive, easily 7 feet tall. Its body a grotesque patchwork of stolen parts. But this wasn't the same champion from the classroom. That one had Zumra fronds sprouting from its skull. This one was different. Worse. No fronds. Instead, its head was smooth and elongated, almost skull-like, with 4 eyes that glowed with sickly yellow light. Its arms, it had 4 of them, were mismatched. One clearly mandarin, dark purple and corded with muscle. Another looked Carlican, scaled and clawed. The third was pink and furred, unmistakably Yorpal. And the fourth, Miss Rimiki's stomach heaved. The 4th arm was human. She could see it clearly. The pale skin, the 5 fingers, the structure of the forearm and wrist. It had been grafted onto the champion's shoulder at an unnatural angle. The skin around the connection point mottled and scarred. The champion's torso was worse. Patches of different skin types stitched together like some nightmarish quilt. She saw mandarin purple, Yorpal fur, scaled sections that might have been Carlican or Zumra, and stars above, more human skin. A large section across its chest pale and smooth, the nipple still visible, sickeningly out of place on the monster's frame. Flashbacks hit her mind. The classroom, the champion with fronds standing outside the door, the mental pressure crushing down on her students. Turin's memories, the flesh-crafting chambers, the parasites writhing in their glass containers, the screams. This was real. This was here. This was...
Stay clear of the windows!
The voice boomed from speakers mounted in the ceiling, a human soldier commanding, leaving no room for argument. Miss Rimiki didn't know what was about to happen. Her planning had involved the general idea of using the leaders as bait, not the specifics of how humanity intended to protect them. She trusted Agent Smith when he'd said they had a plan. Now she realized she should have asked for details. The champion lunged forward, impossibly fast for something so large. The windows exploded, all of them. Every pane of glass in the room shattered simultaneously from the outside, sending crystalline shards spinning through the air in glittering clouds. And through those windows came humans, dozens of them, rappelling on ropes, already firing before their boots hit the floor. The gunfire was deafening. XC-1 Lancers barked in controlled bursts, the muzzle flashes strobing like lightning. The champion staggered as rounds punched into its stolen flesh, orange-gray fluid spraying from the wounds. It screamed, a sound that wasn't human or mandarin or anything else, a wet, gargling shriek that was hard to comprehend. The Yorpal elders were screaming too, their paws clamped over their ears as the gunfire echoed off the walls. One of them, the white-furred elder who'd been so smug moments ago, had his tail tucked so far between his legs it was practically wrapped around his ankle. Miss Rimiki saw the Zumra leaders trying to fight. Council member Tashara's fronds were exuding mental power, her face contorted in concentration as she tried to send a psychic attack at the champion.
Another leader, a male with green scales, was doing the same. Both flinched back almost immediately, their expressions twisting in pain, headaches. The champion's mental defenses were too strong, or its mind was too alien, or... The creature lunged again, scattering the humans who'd been firing at it. Its Yorpal arms swiped at one soldier, claws extended, but the other human rolled under the strike and came up firing.
Help us!
Miss Rimiki turned to see the black and white furred Yorpal elder actually running, toward the human civilians who'd been stationed near the back wall for crowd control. The elder grabbed onto a human man's arm with both paws, clinging to him like a drowning puppy to a piece of driftwood. The other elders weren't far behind, all that arrogance, all that superiority gone in an instant. They pressed themselves against the humans, tails between their legs, ears flat, practically whimpering.
"Stay calm,"
the human man said, his voice remarkably steady, considering he had several terrified alien leaders attached to him like burrs.
"Stay calm and watch. We've got this."
Another wave of humans came through the windows, but these weren't firing bullets. These had different weapons, harpoon guns, bulky and industrial looking. They took positions around the room in a coordinated pattern. Then, as one, they fired. Thunk, thunk, thunk. The sound of harpoons launching was somehow more visceral than gunfire. Barbed projectiles the size of Miss Rimiki's forearm flew through the air, trailing steel cables behind them. They punched into the champion's flesh from every direction at once, shoulders, back, legs, arms, torso. And unlike the bullets, which the champion's regeneration had been slowly pushing out, the harpoons stayed in place. The barbs caught, held, dug deeper. The champion screamed again, trying to move forward, but the cables pulled taut. The humans on the other ends of those cables braced themselves, boots planted, muscles straining. More harpoons flew, more cables. The champion was being pinned from all sides at once, the geometry making movement impossible. It struggled. Stars above it struggled. Its mismatched arms clawed at the cables, its human hand pulling at a harpoon embedded in its shoulder. The grafted flesh tore, orange-gray fluid running down its stolen skin. It thrashed like an animal in a trap, shrieking and hissing, its four eyes burning with rage. But it couldn't break free. Miss Rimiki felt bile rise in her throat. The scene was grotesque. The champion pinned like an insect in a collection, still alive, still fighting, cables cutting into its patchwork flesh. Blood and other fluids pooled on the floor beneath it. The smell hit her then, copper and rot and something chemical she couldn't identify. It was like something out of a horror movie, the kind Caden loved to watch, exploiting her fear to get her to move from the couch to the bed where he would help her forget the scary things with warm arms and warmer kisses. Miss Rimiki shook her head, pushing the thought away. Focus. She was here, now. This was real. She forced herself to walk closer to the pinned champion, her legs trembling but carrying her forward anyway. The creature's eyes tracked her movement, intelligent and hateful. It tried to lunge again, but the cables held. Miss Rimiki turned to face the Yorpal elders and the Zumral leaders. They were huddled together now, all pretense of dignity abandoned. The white-furred elder was still clinging to a human. "Do you still doubt?" Miss Rimiki said, her voice cutting through the sound of the champion's struggles. "That the Mandarin are a threat?" No one answered. The champion screamed again, pulling against the cables. The humans held firm. Miss Rimiki looked at the monster, at its stolen parts, its grafted flesh, its impossible existence. Then she turned her thoughts to Frairen and the others. Had they made it through the portal? Were they already on the Mandarin homeworld, beacon active, transmitting coordinates back to humanity? Or had something gone wrong? She wouldn't know. Not yet. All she could do was stand here, in this room full of terrified leaders, and hope that the crazy Yorpal sergeant and her team were half as competent as she believed them to be. Frairen pressed herself against the wall, her XC-1 Lancer tracking movement as another Mandarin fell to human gunfire. The large industrial kitchen had become a war zone, counters torn apart, appliances riddled with crystal shards, the floor slick with orange-gray blood. She wanted to be in the fight, needed to be, but the beacon strapped to her chest plate was a constant reminder that she couldn't take risks, couldn't charge forward like she wanted to, couldn't do what her instincts screamed at her to do. It was maddening. Himmel and Zetrin were closer to the portal right now, their heavy weapons booming and roaring despite the cramped space. The 40mm grenade launcher wasn't ideal for a kitchen, and the flamethrower even less so, but her friends were making it work. Through her helmet's display, she could see their position markers near the shimmering Terran reality that the Mandarin had opened in the middle of what used to be a pantry. What truly bothered her, what made her claws dig into her rifle grip until her paw pads ached, was that even her 3 pups were closer to the action than she was right now. Makia, Vardal, and Trimmy had taken cover behind an overturned industrial freezer, their XE-1s barking in controlled bursts. She could see them on her HUD. Their position markers clustered together, firing discipline, holding despite the chaos. They were doing well, better than well, and she was stuck here, babysitting a beacon. "Most of the ways are down!" A human voice crackled through her helmet comms, Sergeant Martinez, if she recognized the voice correctly. "Portal's looking clear. Good time for first volunteers to enter." Frairen's ears perked up inside her helmet. First volunteers. Someone had to go through first into an unknown alien planet with no guarantee of what waited on the other side or if they'd ever make it back. One had to be very brave to volunteer for that. It would certainly be a human, she thought. "Are you going in?" Himmel's voice came through the comm channel, slightly breathless. "Or are you running away again?" Frairen smirked despite herself. She couldn't see them from her position, but she could picture it. Himmel needling Zetrin while they crouched behind cover, the Poit's orange eyes full of mischief. Then something unexpected happened.
I am tired of hearing you and Frairen say that all the time.
Zetrin's voice snapped through the comms, his usual drawl gone.
Today, I am not running away.
A cold wave of adrenaline coursed through Frairen's body. Her blood turned to ice in her veins. She spun, peeking around the corner into the corridor that led to the portal room, just in time to catch a glimpse of the bulky flamethrower and the Karlaken carrying it, disappearing into the swirling purple light. "Himmel!" Frairen snarled into her comm. "You just made fun of Zetrin mid-combat. What the hell were you thinking? Go after him!"
"I'm going after him,"
Himmel replied, and she could hear him moving, boots pounding on tile.
"You don't have to tell me."
"I'm telling you anyway! Get in there and watch his back!" She peeked around the corner again, just in time to see Himmel's smaller form sprinting through a hail of orange crystals, his grenade launcher clutched to his chest. The Mandarin were still shooting, still trying to defend their portal, but Himmel weaved and ducked. Then he was through, gone, swallowed by light. Her worry didn't subside. If anything, it got worse. Both her friends were through the portal now, on an alien world, possibly surrounded by enemies, and she was still here. To hell with waiting for the right moment. Frairen turned to her 3 pups. Makia's pink fur was matted with sweat inside her helmet. Vardal and Trimmy both had their rifles up ready, their earlier hesitation from the agricultural world nowhere to be seen. "Are you ready to follow me?" Frairen barked.
Yes, Sergeant!
All 3 responded in unison. Vardal's voice cut through again, fierce and determined. "We'll follow you to hell if you give the order, Sergeant." Trimmy echoed the sentiments. "To hell and back!" Something warm bloomed in Frairen's chest. These weren't the same terrified recruits who'd frozen up on that Rimiki farm. These were soldiers now. Her soldiers. "Then charge!" Frairen roared, breaking from cover. The last thing she heard as she sprinted toward the portal was human voices shouting through her helmet comms.
"Frairen, wait! We need to..."
The glowing spatial distortion swallowed her. The sensation was like being drunk. The world tilted sideways, her inner ears screaming that she was falling even though her paws were still moving. Her vision blurred, colors bleeding into each other like wet paint. It reminded her of the one time she'd had too much human whiskey on duty. Not that she'd ever admit to that, except worse. It was the portal. It had to be. Some kind of disorienting effect from traveling through whatever impossible physics made the damn thing work. Frairen stumbled as she emerged on the other side, trying to get her bearings, trying to look around and assess the alien world she'd just entered. 3 heavy bodies slammed into her from behind. Her pups, coming through the portal right after her. No gap, no spacing, just all 3 of them emerging at once and crashing into their sergeant like a freight train. Frairen went down hard, her armor clanging against stone as Makia, Vartal, and Trimmy landed on top of her in a tangle of limbs and weapons. The XC-1 Lancers clattered. Someone's boot caught in her ribs. She heard Makia yelp as Vartal's elbow connected with her helmet. "Get off!" Frairen snarled, shoving at the pile of Yorpal recruits. "Get off me!" They scrambled to their feet, ears flat in embarrassment, helping pull Frairen up. She was halfway to her paws when she saw it. The portal was closing. The ring of light was shrinking, collapsing in like a dying star. Within seconds, it had reduced to a pinpoint, then vanished completely with a soft pop. Her mind went into overdrive. Ambush. Had to be an ambush. The Mandarin had lured them through and closed the portal behind them. They were cut off now, trapped, surrounded on a hostile alien world with no way home. She spun, bringing her rifle up, scanning for enemies. The smell of burned flesh hit her sensitive snout like a physical blow.
Completely stupid!
Himmel's voice traveled across the space, high-pitched and angry.
How could you just burn them alive like that? They were controlling the portal! We needed them!
I was alone against the enemy on their planet.
Zetran shot back, his hood fully flared.
What was I supposed to do? Let them kill me? And you are not exactly being careful with that trigger either. I saw you shoot one in the face.
Frairen turned toward the voices. They were standing in the middle of 4 giant crystals arranged in a circle, like some kind of altar or ritual space. Each crystal was easily twice her height, glowing with a dull orange light that seemed to be alive. And beneath each crystal, Frairen's eyes widened. Smoking Mandarin bodies, 4 of them, one under each crystal, their bodies charred and twisted, the smell of cooked flesh overwhelming even through her helmet's filters. Himmel had his grenade launcher pointed at one. Scorch marks and shrapnel damage painted the story clearly. He'd shot that Mandarin point blank, probably as soon as he'd come through the portal. Zetran's flamethrower was still smoking, the nozzle dripping with residual fuel. The other 3 bodies bore the unmistakable signs of having been burned alive. "You killed the portal operators," Frairen said very slowly, the realization settling over her like a heavy blanket.
They were shooting at me.
Zetran protested.
They were definitely shooting at us,
Himmel added, though his voice had lost some of its accusatory edge.
But yes, in retrospect, perhaps we should have subdued rather than killed.
Frairen looked around properly for the first time. They were in some kind of chamber, the walls made of the same dark purple stone. The 4 crystals dominated the space, their constant light casting strange shadows. Through an archway, she could see what looked like a corridor leading outside. No windows, no view of the sky, no idea where on the planet they were or what waited on the planet's surface. She looked at her team, Himmel and Zetran still bickering quietly, Makia, Vartal, and Trimmy standing in a defensive triangle, rifles up and ready. 6 of them, alone, on a hostile alien world. The portal closed behind them. Frairen's paw moved to the beacon strapped to her chest. The FTL beacon, humanity's revenge, their one chance to locate the Mandarin homeworld and bring the full weight of human fury down on these bastards. Except now, it wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about survival. If they didn't activate this beacon, they didn't get the signal out. Humanity would never find them, would never know where they were, would never be able to mount a rescue. The beacon had been important before. A mission, objective, a goal. Now it represented their very lives. Frairen took a deep breath, her paws steady as she began activating the beacon's startup sequence. "Listen up. she said, her voice ending her friend's bickering. "We're alone, we're cut off, and we need to keep this beacon active and protected until humanity can track our signal and come get us." She looked each of them in the eye. Himmel, Zetrin, Makia, Vardal, Trimmy. "That means we go outside and we hold position. We fight anything that comes looking for trouble, and we survive long enough to see the big mouth bass arrive in orbit." The beacon's startup sequence completed. An artificial white light began blinking from the device, steady and rhythmic. Somewhere above them, miles above, through stone and sky, the signal was already transmitting. Humanity was coming. They just had to stay alive long enough for the cavalry to arrive.